Chapter 7 Tokyo. The darkness grows beneath the exploration pod, and the crew remains suspended in seatbelts. Boosters from below begin to slow the vessel, and the crew lands in their seats without a rattle. The Pacific ice jostles the walls, and the back door falls onto snow in the sea of shadow. The biological team departs. Then, the hatch closes and the ship rises to move northwest, to the long-forgotten city of Tokyo. Tattered and blackened, the city is frozen in time, decayed by micrometeors and the weapons that rained from the sky over 500 years ago. The engineers step onto the littered streets, illuminated by headlamps in the light of the explorer pod. Monoliths reach up toward pinhole stars in the blackened sky, underlit by the exploration crew. Glass windows reflect the night sky in towers. Human remains are scattered about. Signs and papers written in the foreign language. Pools of frozen water are covered in a slush of atmosphere. A dusting of tholins covers everything. The bodies, the streets, and the windowsills of buildings. Whole families cower in entryways, their bodies singed from a blast. On a private channel, Julius radios to Dr. Lawrence. "You holding up well?" Dr. Lawrence looks at the partially burnt body of a child, huddled up, alone with a blanket. "I'm doing fine." The crew begins walking outward from the blast, and the spacecraft begins hovering slowly behind them. Small items are gathered. Watches and cell phones are placed in a bin aboard the ship, where a digital meter reads the weight in red numbers. Further from the blast, the bodies become less burnt, less frequent, and yet their expressions grow more terrified with each mile. Artifacts become more abundant, and buildings are more stable. The crew begins to look more extensively inside the structures. "Dr. Lawrence?" an assistant calls over the headset. "Yes," she replies. "I can't tell, but I think you'll want this." Dr. Lawrence walks over a pile of rubble to the young man who called her name. The young man holds a flat plastic disc in the shape of a square. "They're floppy disks," she says as she shows Julius. She looks down at a pile of them on the floor and looks up to the assistant. "Put some of these into the ship, not all of them, maybe 20 or so." As the assistant begins running, she calls out to him. "Gently. They're fragile. I don't want you to trip either." The team moves onward to a group of apartment buildings. There they find a frozen image of life on Earth. Popular culture captured in posters and trinkets. Kitchens and living rooms stuck in the past over 500 years ago. In one apartment room, Dr. Winter stumbles upon a woman's corpse with the chest cavity wide open. She appears to have been butchered by an amateur. The pots and pans on the stove have meat in them, bringing the hairs on his neck to stand up. The abundance of processed foods puts his heart at ease for a moment. Then he examines the cloaked man in the corner. His lamplight shows a frost-covered face. The man smiles maniacally with raw meat between his fingers and the tips of his teeth. Julius stands and moves into the doorway. He watches Elizabeth scan the other rooms. With his posture widened, he privately radios to an assistant. "I need you to look at the back right corner of apartment A12. Do it discreetly." "Copy that." Dr. Lawrence approaches Julius. "You want to check out the other buildings?" she asks. "Sounds good to me," he says. He gestures Elizabeth to lead the way, and he follows her down the stairs. They cross the courtyard into the next building. The first apartment is a nicely decorated home with pictures of a family. "Hey, I'm in the room." The assistant radios back to Winter. "What do you want me to see?" Julius watches Elizabeth as she looks around the room. "Look at his mouth." He radios back. "All I see is a woman." "Wait. The guy in the corner?" "That one." "What do you want me to do with it?" "Take pictures." Silence takes over until a response comes in. "Done. What do you need it for?" "Hoyt might want a record of that." "Gotcha." Julius looks at a picture of the family. They smile in a sunlit garden with a big red gateway. The top of the entryway bows toward the ground. Its legs meet the grass like tree trunks, with nothing else touching the structure. "Julius," Elizabeth calls. He turns to see her holding the square plastic casing of a CD. There's a picture on the cover, but before he can look at it, she moves back into the room she was exploring. There's a whole shelf full of them. He looks at the shelf through the doorway. It is stacked from wall to wall with CDs. Julius radios to the crew. "We need the pod over here. And a few hands while you're at it." "Which building are you in?" The voice radios back. Dr. Winter waves his handheld flashlight out the window. The others look out from windows in the dark. The ship begins to move toward their building, and Julius looks around the room for something to help. He grabs the corner of a rug on the floor, and Elizabeth follows his lead. "Load it on this rug. We can each take a corner." They load the rug up with all the CDs by taking the shelves off and gently dumping their contents toward the middle. Just before moving, Elizabeth finds a photo album with something odd inside. She opens it to find pressed leaves preserved in its pages. Beautiful shades of yellow, red, orange, and green. While dead, they have withstood the test of time. She stands amazed and soon smiles. She puts the photo album on top of the CDs and looks at Julius. "I'd like to see Manning bitch about that." He laughs and shakes his head. "Are you ready?" They carry the rug halfway down the stairs where they meet the assistants who drove the ship. They both begin helping them, and one begins to talk. "We need to go to an English-speaking country. I don't know what's of value here." Dr. Winter agrees. "I think once we get the hang of it, we'll know what to take." The other assistant looks toward the CDs on the rug. "That one's in English." Julius tenses his brows in curiosity. "What does it say?" The assistant turns the case. There's a guy on it. It says Elton John. And over here it says Greatest Hits. They all look just shy of laughing. "Music?" Julius says. "Looks like we're bringing back some entertainment," Elizabeth laughs. "Assuming they work," the assistant replies. "True," the other assistant says. "Dr. Morris will be happy." Everyone agrees. With the ship loaded, they begin to check the time. "It's leaving time," Elizabeth says. An assistant looks surprised. "It's already been 4 hours?" "There was a lot of walking," she reminds him. "We need to start this far out from the blast next time," Julius adds. "That and we should go to the United States," the other assistant says. They all agree. With the findings stowed away, they board the ship. As it ascends to race across the stars, Julius smiles at Elizabeth. She smiles in return, full of excitement.